Hey, what's up, YouTube? Welcome to the very first episode of Just the Tip. Just the Tip is a series I created to share with you some of the things that I've learned throughout the years just working on my own stuff and helping friends. Maybe some of these tricks can help you. For this very first episode, I want to talk about things that you look for when buying a used bike. To go over some of the things you should look for, let's look at this bike I just picked up a couple weeks ago. This is a 2000 Honda CBR F4 600cc bike. Well, obviously the first thing you want to look at is the overall condition. The fairings, the tank, the seat. Is the seat all torn? Has it been sitting outside forever? If it has, that chain will be all rusty. All the little bolts will be rusty. You'll have rust in here. This one doesn't have fairings on it because I already took them apart. I've been working on this bike a little bit, so the fairings are over here. They look really nice. So the next thing I always look at is the front end. Is the front end straight? Is anything bent? This one actually was. This fork was bent back, the wheel was bent. This fender was actually pushing on the tire. So I had to put a new front end on it. Hop on the bike, get the handlebars straight. Make sure this is lined up and make sure that your fender and your tire are lined up with that. Just make sure everything lines up in a straight line all the way back through your gas tank. So the next thing I always look at is on the front end. It's these fork seals right here. Make sure your fork seals aren't leaking. If it's leaking over here, it can get on the brakes, damage the brakes, but that can be expensive to fix if you can't do them yourself. So fork seals is definitely something you want to watch. The next thing I always check is the tires. Do they have good deep tread, and do they have dry rot cracks? Because sometimes they can look good but have dry rot cracks if it's been sitting a long time, and that kind of tire can come apart, so you don't want that. One thing you want to watch for with tires is the date code, because this tire right here looks pretty good. It's square, as you can see, but it looks pretty good. It's got good tread and everything. Let's look at the date code. If you look, the Department of Transportation puts numbers on these. You can see these numbers here, and the very last one says 0714. So that means 7 of 14 was when that tire was manufactured. So that needs a new tire. That is dangerous. That's a 6-year-old tire on there, and who knows how long it's been sitting. So always check the date code if you can find it. Alright, well the next thing is the chain and sprocket. Everybody was waiting for that one, I'm sure. Is the chain all rusted? You can see this one has a little rust on it. This one's not really in too bad a shape. It needs a good cleaning in a lube, but you can tell it hasn't been sitting outside, because if it was sitting outside, this entire thing would be rusted. You also want to check the teeth on the sprocket and make sure that none of those are broken or chipped. To inspect this front sprocket, obviously you would need to remove the cover, and you're not going to be able to do that while you're sitting there talking to the person. So, usually if the chain looks good and the rear sprocket looks good, then the front sprocket's most likely good as well. These things always wear in sets. I always recommend changing them in sets. If you get a new chain, get a new sprocket. The next thing is to check the fluids. Check the oil. Make sure it's not only full, but it looks decent. If we look, you can look through the spyglass and you can see that this one's right on where it should be, a little full, and it looks nice and clean. Even with the fairings on, you can loosen the oil cap here, and you can inspect it. If you have antifreeze mixing with oil, it gets milky and it gets everywhere. So you'd see that condensation on the inside of your oil cap. If you have the opportunity, get in and check the antifreeze. If you're buying a bike with no fairings, look at that. Nice green to the top, no rust, no oil in there. Looks really good. If that looks like a chocolate milk, then you have a head gasket problem or cracked head. Your oil and antifreeze are mixing if your oil or your antifreeze looks like milk. You always want to check for oil leaks. I always start at the top. Look at the valve cover gasket. This one's actually leaking just a little bit. Go down to the side covers, the head gasket, and just make sure that nothing looks real wet, and make sure it's not leaving a puddle. Oil will collect under the bottom of the fairing, so if it has the fairings on it and you can't really get in there, if it's leaking a lot of oil, it's going to have it all over the bottom of the fairing and inside the bottom of the fairing. So be sure to check that. The last thing I can recommend is to ride it. If you're able to ride the motorcycle, ride it, feel it, smell it, everything. Your nose will tell you a lot. If it's leaking oil onto the exhaust, you'll smell it. If it's leaking that bad. If it's leaking fuel, you'll smell it. Well, I know we didn't go over everything, but those are the few things that I always look for right off the bat. And by that time, if it's a used motorcycle, especially if it doesn't run because of something that they have told me, after that, I'm pretty confident in it. That's all I have for this episode. Leave in the comments things I missed, things that you can think of. I'm sure it'll help someone out. Well, this is 12 o'clock, and remember, I can't guarantee your work. This is just the tip. I know we didn't go over everything, but maybe some of these tips will help you and think just. I know we didn't go over. Oh my God.